Hi, everyone. This is Hal Krosman with Screenwriting U, and today we're going to be talking about rewrites that sell. Now, this is important. Your rewriting process may be one of probably the second most important thing you do when it comes to writing scripts and increasing your chance of being able to make something happen with those scripts. So let's just go through. Here's what we're going to do today. We're first going to talk about what levels are you writing at. For a lot of people, this is going to give you a breakthrough. You know, what you focus on a lot of times is what you get. And if what you're looking at is the exact thing that will cause a producer to say yes and want to work with you, you have a much, much better chance of success. So we'll look at 3 different levels of rewriting. We'll talk about 7 rewrite passes that can improve your script. And then we'll look at the upcoming class, the new class called Professional Rewrite Process, which does exactly what it says. This is a program that we put thousands of hours into, and we've made sure that it delivers exactly what you need to be able to rewrite at a professional level. So let's start. What levels are you writing at? This one, if I back up long time ago, 20 some odd years ago, I took a class where they presented a rewrite model. And their rewrite model basically was you work with the words right up here at the top, and the dialogue, and the action, which is the description, right? So the person who put on that particular class had an interesting way of presenting it. She said, these are the only 3 things that a director or producer sees on a script, right? You open up any script, there you have words, dialogue, and description. Knowing that, then we spent endless rounds going through, starting at the very beginning, going through every single scene, improving those 3 things. At the end of that, I got the script into producers. We had a great pitch. We got it into 24 different producers, and they came back to me and said the script wasn't ready. There were problems beneath the surface. Now look at this line right here. That's the surface, right? So most of your action is going to be on the surface. There's some of your action that's beneath the surface. But I had focused almost entirely on the surface of the script, and it was why they turned it down. They thought my wordsmithing was good. They thought my dialogue was good, and even the action choices that I made. But everything they talked about that was a problem was beneath the surface. So let's talk about where that goes. Because the question is, what can you do that will make your script significantly better in the eyes of the industry, right? In the eyes of a producer, in the eyes of a director or an actor. What can you do that will change things for you? So let's just go right down this list here. The next level down is situation. And this is an untapped area for a lot of people. It has a lot of potential. The situation, if you look at any scene, is what are the circumstances, the challenging circumstances the characters are in. And this isn't a small thing. Like, let me ask you this question. If you were to pull out your script right now and go through the entire script, and all you're looking for is one thing, where are the talking heads scenes? Now think about it for a moment. You know, a talking head scenes basically means this. You've got 2 people talking on the screen. And yes, we're going to cut back and forth. We're going to go to this one and this one and this one and this one. But the truth of the matter is we still just have 2 people talking with each other. Every time you have one of those, you have an opportunity to make the situation something great. So here's what a situation basically is. It means you've got a challenging situation that in and of itself, it engages the audience and causes them to wonder what's going to happen, right? You have put those characters in a difficult situation that, you know, they hadn't considered before. They've never dealt with. And we're watching them try to somehow survive that situation. Now, by the way, the situation could be as light as two people arguing, and yeah, in that case, you might have a talking head scene, but it depends on where you put it. Uh, like, let's say, for instance, we have a man and a woman at a diner, and they're having a conversation about her child. Now, and it might be his too, I don't know, but let's just say that. So we've got these two, they're having a conversation about the child. If we do it there, they might have an argument. That might be the worst it is. But if we put it in front of a judge and it's a custody hearing, now we have all kinds of stakes that didn't exist down here. Now we have somebody's about to lose something. A judge is about to make a decision. The child's life is at stake, and their future is at stake. If we had the same conversation again, but this time, let's say the woman is talking to the kidnapper of her son. And yes, they're talking about the child and its well-being and all that kind of thing, but it's much more than that. It's about the child's safety and is he going to survive or is she going to survive, right? So you change the situation and the experience the audience has of that conversation is radically different. Now let's go to character. And characters are, if you're talking about your lead characters, it's everything, right? It's you are looking at two or three people that are going to take us through this story, take us on this journey, and are going to bring all kinds of conflict into our lives. And we are going to have to experience this story through what they choose to do, their decisions, and their actions. So below that then is story. So now we're talking, and by the way, story begins at the beginning of page 1 and it ends all the way over here at the end of the final page. When you are looking at your story, you're seeing things like the concept, the theme, the transformational journey that goes across the story. You are seeing things that are beneath the surface, that are hidden, that are all the way across the story, whatever intrigue, whatever mystery is going on, those kinds of things. So this is incredibly important that you get this right. Now, there's one more thing beneath this surface. So this is everything that's in the script. There's one more. Can you guess what it is? And this one is the pitch. The pitch is another level at which all of this is thought through. I have, we ran Pitch Fest at one point. I worked with Inktip and we had over 300 people show up for a Pitch Fest. I'm going to say at least 100 of them came over to our booth. We actually had a little sign that said, we'll help you with your pitch. At least 100 of them came over to our booth sometime during that day because they were having problems pitching to producers. They weren't getting script requests. They didn't know why. And the first question I would ask them is, when did you create your pitch? The vast majority said, after I finished writing, of course. That's a decision. That's an interesting decision because the problem that they were having wasn't whether the words were good, whether the writing was good, whether the story was good. The problem they were having was that the pitch wasn't selling, and or that they had created the pitch afterwards and the script didn't honor it well. So that made it so difficult for them. So what we started saying was, whatever draft you're in, What if you created a pitch now before you do your rewrite? So let's say you're in your third draft, right? And you've gone through and you've worked with the script and you have most of it the way you want. Maybe there's some things you want to improve in some of these areas beneath the surface. But at your third draft, before you go to the fourth draft, if you create your pitch and you get that pitch working, then when you go to the fourth draft, you can rewrite this story to match that pitch. And doing that increases the chance your script will sell. They request the script because of the pitch. They buy the script because it pays that pitch off. So incredibly important. Let me tell you one other thing on this. I was interviewing, actually, I've talked with a bunch of A-list writers that said this, but the first one that said it to me about 7 years ago, he said, I create the pitch first. Once I know I can sell it, I write the script. What if you did that? You know, and by the way, again, if you're on your third draft and you're going to rewrite, make sure that you create a great pitch right now. And then every draft after that is about getting the story, the script closer and closer and closer to that pitch. So a couple of other things. So going back up, let's talk about what these are about. So the story should be the best possible expression of your high concept. So whatever your high concept is, whatever your pitch is, that story delivers on it powerfully. You should have an amazing transformational journey for 2-minute trailers, right? That's 70% plus of the 2-minute trailers that are out there. And when you go to a movie theater, are the transformational journey. So when a producer is looking at your script, they're asking themselves, can I sell this to an audience? And my hope is that they say yes to you on that they see that, wow, you created something that was truly designed to be sold to an audience. We'll talk about these a little bit later. Then the characters need to be designed to be sold to major actors, right? And this doesn't mean just making them look pretty. This means you're creating specific roles. And again, I'm going to walk you through that in just a second. Then the situations need to be challenging so that they keep our attention and they keep us wondering what's going to happen next. Now that you have that, you look at the actions. Are these actions that actors want to take? And let me just pause here so this is really clear. There's two kinds of action when you're talking about your script. The first one is called, let's go up the top. Let's say up here, right? That's usually busy work that characters are doing. It's meaningless action. You've got two characters sitting at a restaurant and they're sipping off of their coffee, or they're, taking bites of their food, or they're reading the menu, right? Actors call that busy work. The second type of action is what I would call meaningful action, which means the action delivers the meaning of the scene. Now, think about this. If you've ever seen a scene where one character says to the other, I don't like you. That's one thing, right? It came across in dialogue, the meaning came across. It's like, okay, we get this character doesn't like the other one. But let's just take the same scene, have them talking about whatever they're talking about, and that character, instead of saying, I don't like you, punches the other character. Now we have an action that delivered the meaning of the scene, what's beneath the surface. They don't have to say, I don't like you. We get it pretty fast. If they shoot the other character, we get it. If they fire the other character, we get it, right? When there's action that delivers the meaning if one character throws the other one out of the house. uh, we get that meaning without having to say a word. Now, two things that does for you. First one is it gives the audience a deeper experience. Instead of just words that were said, the audience just experienced that like a physical thing. The second is when your action delivers the meaning, then that means you just freed the dialogue up so it could be anything. You could have two characters talking about washing dishes while they throw knives at each other because they hate each other. And they could continue talking about the dish soap or anything else they want. The knives flying through the air are going to deliver the message as to what the meaning is. And the dialogue can be unique and cool and interesting and compelling and something we've never seen. Right? So worthwhile. And then, of course, you want cool lines that actors will want to say. I was interviewing an actress. A movie had just come out, and we had the director on stage and the male actor and the female actress. And I said, "What caused you to say yes to this role?" And she said this. She goes, "I read the opening scene, and I just thought to myself, I want to be the one saying those words and taking those actions." Right? It was something that when she read those lines, she just went, wow, that character's amazing. I want to be that character. So let me just give you a safety tip on this. First, when you're talking about just your lead characters, not the others, your leads need to have the coolest lines in the story. But here's the safety tip. Go look, start on page 1. Find your lead character and just look at the lines of dialogue that are on page 1 for that protagonist or antagonist, whichever it is. And just ask yourself, if an actor or an actress looked only at those lines, would they say yes? And this is important. There's a lot of people who we were producing at one point, and I turned down some scripts because the writers said they would not change the opening lines of the lead character. And it was a team of writers, 2 writers, and they came back and said, no, we won't change a word of it. So we dropped the project right then. But let me tell you what happened. Well, why we said that was because I looked at those 2 lines and I went, any character in this script could have said those 2 lines. They're not unique to this hero. There was nothing about them that was really interesting. The writer was, or the 2 writers were just trying to set up something about who the character was, and they were trying to have the character tell their story at the very beginning. It was too bad. So those opening lines need to be incredible, and pretty much any line your lead characters say need to be held to a different standard. And then finally, on the words, my main advice, make it a fast read. And this didn't come from me. It came from a producer interview. I was at Paramount, and we were interviewing a whole bunch of producers, and I asked them, when you read a script, what are the things that you think are most important? A fast read came up in 5 out of 6 producers that I interviewed. And I finally asked, after the 3rd time, I asked this one producer, so why is that so important to you? And she said, well, there's 2 things. She goes, first, I read between 10 to 15 scripts every week. She goes, it stopped being fun about 6 years ago. And I was like, okay. And she said, second, there's many times where all I have is 45 minutes. And if I look at the script and I go, okay, this is a fast read, I will speed read through it, get to the end and say, wow, I love that story, and get a hold of the writer. She goes, if I look at the script and it's a dense read, which means there's lots of big blocks of words. She said, if I see that, I stand back and go, oh no. Now, that's important to know. So that means she puts it off because there's nothing there that she can get done very quickly. Now, how do we deal with this? And don't worry, I'm going to go through a whole bunch of different things for you. But above the line there, above that line, it's all about editing. And this is when you're editing words. I would say this is probably the focus of draft 4, 5, 6, and beyond. Beneath is these major components. And at least your first 3 drafts should be all about you getting these right, getting these to a level that are so powerful, so interesting, so compelling that any producer in their right mind would say yes to you. And that's what we want, right? That's where we're headed. Okay, so let's now go into what's going to sell. Obviously, we've talked about editing the words. This is where people usually go first. I'm saying don't go there yet. Elevating major components, and then finally rethinking decisions that cause it to sell. So if you go back at that, look at that triangle, these decisions are at the bottom for the most part. These are second, and editing the words is third. Now, pass number 1. I would be looking at this pass primarily from a perspective of, can it sell? You want to first take a look at your high concept. And a high concept, for those of you who haven't worked with them before, means it is a single sentence that is a major hook of this story. And the moment you say it, people can see the movie in their mind. Doesn't mean they know everything that happened, but they can see it, So let me give you an example. I'll use this one. I like this one. It's kind of fun. I'm not saying you should go see the movie, but I'll just use it. If you've ever heard of The Purge, which is a horror movie put out by Blumhouse, the pitch, the high concept on it is not the same as the log line. Let me show you the difference. The high concept answers the question having to do with X. What haven't we seen before? So here's what the high concept of The Purge is. And this is just in my mind. What would happen if for a 12-hour period, anyone in the United States could commit any crime and get away with it? When I first heard that pitch before that movie came out, I instantly said it's going to be a hit. It's going to be easy for them to market. On top of that, that's a franchise, right? They could do a whole series of different different movies, which they did. They also could do a TV series based on it. It's really strong, but that's really simple. Having to do with horror, what haven't we seen before? We had never seen, and let's say it a different way, having to do with the monster, the antagonist, the bad guy. What haven't we seen before? We'd never seen a thing before where anyone in the US could kill anyone else, therefore making it a really interesting horror movie from that perspective. So that's what you're looking for. Now, by the way, let me take it outside of horror. Having to do with what? What haven't we seen before? Having to do with, you could say having to do with a thriller, having to do with comedy, having to do with a rom-com, what haven't we seen before? But I want to do this one differently. If you saw Groundhog Day, when that came out, at least in my experience, it was kind of revolutionary. I don't remember before that seeing something where the person lived the same day over and over and over. I'm sure that there was something like that, but I don't remember it. Uh, so there was something about that movie that was incredible. Somebody along the way asked the question having to do with Groundhog Day, what haven't we seen before? And that takes us to like war. We hadn't seen a war that was like a Groundhog Day. So they put that one together and created the movie Edge of Tomorrow. It had Tom Cruise and Emily Blunt in it. They renamed it later Live, Die, Repeat. But it was a big hit. It was very successful. It was very interesting. It kept us engaged. We're watching basically the same war scenes over and over and over, but the guy is changing along the way. He's figuring it out. He joins up with her. The two of them both have had this experience. They have this thing in common, and they go through and solve it by themselves, or together. Uh, Having to do with Groundhog Day, what else haven't we seen? Well, there was a point along the way where we hadn't seen a Groundhog Day horror movie. And so someone came up with the idea of a movie where there's horror that happens and the person relives their death over and over and over until they solve it. And that one was called Happy Death Day. Happy Death Day. If you haven't seen it, it was actually worth seeing. It's not bad. And they came out with a sequel to it. But that's the process. You know, if you look at whatever you've got right now and you can't answer this question, there's nothing in there where we have a what haven't we seen before, it might be worth re-brainstorming. Second thing is your title. The purpose of a title, the real purpose of a title is 100% marketing. Now, first time I heard a producer say that, 15 years ago, I was doing an interview and he said 100% marketing. I said, nothing else? And he goes, nothing else. He said, it's just all marketing. That's what the purpose of a title is. And I said, well, okay, but aren't there ever titles that are just about maybe pointing to a small part of the script, pointing to something unique, pointing to this, that, whatever? And he said, the title, now he was very adamant about this. The title needs to point to the high concept. So if you have a title that doesn't point to your high concept, the job is to redo it. So I said, okay, great. So why is it 100% marketing? Why is that what the title's about? You know, why isn't part of it about, well, the writer liked a different title? And his response was, this title is going to be the most heard and spoken words about your movie ever. Everything ever said about your movie, the title is going to be there more than any. It is every time they mention it in the media, they're going to say the title. Every time it's mentioned on social media, people say the title, right? It's going to be the biggest word in any icon, any movie poster, you know, if you look on Netflix, it'll be the thing you see along with a picture of the actor. He said it's the most important words you write in your lifetime if you're trying to sell. So keep this in mind. You need a unique title. It needs to point to the high concept, and it needs to be something that the moment you say it, people light up, right? Do that, and now you've got two major keys to the marketing process. Here's the third. It speaks to the audience. So first thing that has you ask is, who's the audience that this is going to be marketed to? And let me give you an example. We had a writer who wrote a script that was about an event that happened at a school and the things that were you know, that these kids went through and everything else. You can decide what that is or not. Don't worry about it. But in this case, the two lead characters were teachers that were in their 40s, and they were the primary ones talking. So I said to her, "Who do you think the audience is?" And she goes, "Oh, you know, high school boys and girls." And I'm like, "Okay. And who has the most lines in this script?" And she goes, "The two teachers." And I said, "Okay." So I said, "Who's going to show up most on the screen?" And she said, "The two teachers." And I said, "All right. Uh, who has the transformational journey?" And she said, "One of the teachers." And I was like, "All right, you've got a script that is going to be marketed to an audience that is not about that audience, that is not designed for that audience, that doesn't take that audience through a journey of theirs, right? You may want to reconsider that. So here's what you do. And by the way, my hope is that your script actually is designed and speaks to the audience. Whoever you think your audience is, the lead characters need to come from that audience. And it needs to be a journey about those lead characters who come from that audience, right? They have the majority of the lines, they have the conflict, they're dealing with the issues that fit who that audience is, right? Essentially, your script needs to be a love letter to that audience. Now, let me go back to this writer. To her credit, she went back, looked at her script and said, "Okay, I'll keep these two older characters, the ones in their 40s, but she replaced the journey, she changed it, she put in the younger characters doing the majority of the lines, having the journey, having to deal with their own issues, and she ended up getting the script option. It made a significant difference in her chance of success. Okay, let's go to next, the big picture decision pass. So remember, producers, while they love certain things, like I've had producers who say, you know, the lead characters, those I love great lead characters. Or I'll say, what matters most to you in a script? And they'll say, amazing dialogue, or you know, action producers will say phenomenal action set pieces and all that kind of thing. Those are all important. And then I would say to them, I just ask a question, and this is after about 5 years of doing this, here's what happened. I would say, "Okay, but let me ask you something. If that script is really hard to pitch, do you still say yes to it?" And most of them, their answer was no. So every step you take through here, you're going to be looking to see, does it deliver on the pitch, right? We've already got a pitch. You came up with that once earlier when we were talking about it in the last part. Does every scene deliver on that pitch in some way? Does the scene either set up the high concept? Is it the beginning stages of the high concept? Is it part of the conflict produced by the high concept? Are we watching these characters having to deal with that conflict, right? What are we going through having to do with the pitch? And if you just glance at every scene and just ask yourself, what role does it play in the pitch, having to do with the pitch? You're going to be able to tell whether or not they'll look at this script and say yes. They said yes to the pitch. It's why they're reading the script. Now, will they say yes to the script itself? So, and now, as you're doing that, then you go to every structure point and you check it, right? Does the opening do a great job? Does it set us up? Does it engage us? Does it clearly give the genre, all that kind of thing? Does the inciting incident incite us to go on this journey, right? Does it lure us in? And there's a big difference between an inciting incident where a character sits at home and goes, what if I took a trip to Europe? Versus an inciting incident where a character was forced to flee the US and went to Europe in order to survive, got there and found out that the mafia already had hit people there looking for him or her, right? That second inciting incident is significantly more powerful. It sends us on this same journey, but it sends us there in a way that's dramatic and compelling and has us be really scared for that character. Your Act 1 turning point, your midpoint, your Act 2 turning point, all three of these need to be very strong. And be careful in this area. There's some people who have been told that they should create subtle structure. Don't do that. You want them to be able to see your structure. Readers in this industry are going to look for your structure, and if any of it is weak, if any of it is subtle, they're going to turn the script down. Make it strong, make it powerful. These turning points, the whole purpose of them is to re-engage this audience in a bigger way. So if you make these really subtle, the subtle, by the way, means difficult to perceive. Look it up in the dictionary. Those are the words you'll see. If you make it difficult to perceive these turning points, your audience isn't going to have the same experience. So then your climax needs to be the ultimate expression of the conflict. So whatever your conflict is, look at it and say, what would be the ultimate expression of this? Right? If this thing starts out and we got a couple of people fighting, the ultimate expression might mean they have a gunfight at the end, or they might go to war with each other, or they might destroy each other's homes, or whatever. But it needs to be strong, and it needs to bring them face to face finally, in the most devastating way possible, so that people feel like they went through a journey that came to a climax. And then finally, the resolution. And here's what I'd be careful on resolution. Resolution needs to, bring us back to their new norm. How have things changed in their life? But I'd be careful not to make it average, not to make it dull. Yes, we're going to see them in their new life. Let's say these two started an argument here in the opening. Finally, in the climax, they have the ultimate fist fight where they beat the living hell out of each other. If the resolution is, hey, they're friends again, then I would find what would be the most interesting way to show that, right? What would be the way that this whole movie has basically built up to? And now when we see that, we go, oh, right? It's like it has meaning for us. So be thinking about these. This is important. Every reader in this industry sees your structure. So just know that. They've read so many scripts, they know exactly what they're looking for. If any of this is missing, if any of this is weak, if any of this is from a different movie, they'll recognize it. Now we're on pass 3. And again, I hope you're noticing this. We're not doing chronological edits where we're editing the words right now. On any of these early passes, until we get to the last pass, the words are not the thing you're focusing your attention on. And so, like, let's say I was in the midst of this pass and I'm trying to create a transformational journey. And in the midst of it, I start editing words and I say, maybe I shouldn't call it a pass. Maybe I should call it a read through. Maybe I should call it this. Maybe I should call it that. I go to the thesaurus and everything else. I've stepped out of what I was trying to do and I've gone to wordsmithing. Anytime you do that, whatever the real purpose of the pass is, something confused you or something was difficult or something, and you suddenly thought you were on the final draft doing wordsmithing. So I use that as a cue to tell me, am I there or not? Am I really focused on the thing I'm supposed to be brainstorming here? So pass 3, you're looking at character and you're looking at your transformational journey. So first thing I'd do is I'd lay out your storylines of your main characters. This would be your protagonist, your antagonist. If there's a triangle character or some other character that is a main character, I'd go look at their storylines. Now, let me pause. What you're looking for, by the way, is an engaging beginning, middle, and a fitting ending. But let's go back for a moment. When you created your script in the very beginning, when you came up with the idea, very likely there was one character that it was mainly focused on, right? And it might be you came up with a great antagonist who was incredible, and you spent a lot of time thinking about that character, and it's like, wow, that character's going to make the movie. Or you came up with a great protagonist, and you looked at the overall journey, and you worked through how to create that journey for the protagonist. Whichever character you came up with second likely isn't as strong. Now, I'm not saying I haven't looked at your script, so the truth is, I don't know what you've got. But this is just kind of a general thing, especially when people create a protagonist first, and then they figure out, as they're trying to write the first draft, they figure out who the antagonist is. A lot of times we'll look at those antagonists and their storyline won't be as strong, right? They'll be this mean, scary, angry person or monster or whatever it is, but there'll be holes in their storyline. So first thing you do here, lay out the storylines for both characters. Your protagonist very likely is going to go through, their storyline is going to look like the structure of the script. But your antagonist may have a completely different storyline. And in fact, if you were writing a thriller, for instance, your antagonist, like let's say the story is here, your antagonist story might have started way over here. It might have started 15 years ago, right? Like you look at Basic Instinct, and the lady, I think her name was Beth. Beth actually came up with that plan, basically, it looks like about 10 years before that story started. And she had already set it into motion. And the very first scene that we see is, her killing the rock star, if you believe that she was the killer, her killing the rock star after she had already set the whole thing in motion. She had already read Catherine's book. She had already figured out how to pin the whole thing on her. She had already designed a whole series of steps to be able to make this happen. And she had a relationship with and become the psychotherapist actually of the main police officer who was investigating the thing. So her story started 10 years before the script started, 10 years before we ever saw the protagonist of that particular movie, right? So your character storylines often may be different. Your antagonist, your protagonist may have radically different experiences of what's going on. So lay those out, go through with the main characters, check to see these 3 things. Let me say a word about this. Fitting ending. I was talking with the writer of The Tudors. I'll think of his name in a minute. But I said, okay, so we're on, you're going from season 3 to season 4. Let me ask you, so what was the biggest challenge of writing season 4? And he said, well, in season 4, 10 of the royals were beheaded. And I was like, really? I said, did that happen in real life? And he said, yes. But he said they happened actually over a large span of time. But 10 of the royals were beheaded in season 4. And he said, it's the ending of almost every other episode. And he said, my big problem was, how do I make them unique? So I was like, okay, that's interesting. And this is what he said. He said, I needed to give each one of them a fitting ending based on who they were. So he said, for instance, one person was very religious. And so at this point, we had this moment where it looked like God failed her. And she was having to face that possibility. He said there was a male, and I'm sorry, I can't remember which one it was, but he said this guy had always, because he was a royal, he had a position in the military, but he had never gone to war. But he had always talked about how everybody else was a coward. He said the fitting ending for him was watching him babble and beg all the way to the moment of his death. He said we got to see who he finally was, right? So these are important things: how the character begins, the middle of their storyline, and the fitting ending that fits who they are. And by the way, the ending doesn't need to be them dying. That just happened to be in that particular show. Then you want to lay out your transformational journey. So where does your character start? Where do they end? Talking about your lead character, whoever the hero is of this story, right? And what had to happen in between to cause the change? So the change often is caused by them being forced into difficult situations that they've never dealt with before. They've spent their whole life avoiding these kinds of situations, and now those situations are upon them, and they must change in order to survive those particular situations. So this is also important. Okay, so you should be able to lay out your transformational journey and take a look at it and say, wow, am I forcing this character through change? And if so, it should be really clear. It shouldn't be that the majority of the change happens in the midst of a conversation, right? There's something that's causing this change, something that's forcing this character to do this, something that's forcing them to go outside of their comfort zone times 10. And that makes it so much more interesting for an audience because it will be unpredictable. Okay. Now, elevating the situations and the scenes. So I told you what a situation was. Basically, it's the circumstances that challenge the character. The easiest way to find opportunities to improve this is just to go through your whole script and look for every talking head scene you can. That'd be the first thing I would do. Now, let's say you have 15 talking head scenes, maybe out of 40 or 50, you got 15. That's not bad. But if what you did with let's say you did 10 of those 15 and you changed them so that they no longer were a talking head scene, but they had a circumstance, a situation that challenged the lead character in a big way. And yes, they can still have all that dialogue. Yes, they can still interact with each other. Yes, you can still have two people on the screens, but you've got this major challenge going on either physically or by some other character or just by the circumstances they're in. They're in the middle of a hurricane or something like that, while they're trying to decide whether they're going to get a divorce or not, let's say. There you've got some challenging circumstances that will keep us engaged, and their conversation will be actually much more interesting just simply because of that. So I'd go through, find all of those talking head scenes. Improving 5 or 10 of them may completely change the quality of your script. So it's worth it. Second thing, look at every scene. I'd look at every single scene. Make sure it has a scene arc. It starts one place and it ends at another place. And that could be, by the way, that could be location, but usually the way it is, it starts in one kind of situation and it ends in another. It starts with, you know, somebody winning the lottery and it ends with they were disqualified. You know, and that's just in that scene or something. Or it starts with two people who are talking together and it ends they're in a fist fight. There's an arc there. Something has changed. Don't let any scene be static. That's really important. If you have a static scene, I would look at it and say, okay, whatever is happening in that scene is either over here or it's over here. It's either how the scene begins and now it goes to an opposite place to end, or it's how the scene ends and now we back up and create an opposite place to start it. Easy strategy, keeps the story moving, keeps the characters engaging, keeps what's happening there interesting, and it keeps your reader and audience engaged on a level that they don't understand, they don't even know is happening. Second thing, look at each scene and ask, what's the conflict? And the conflict could be all the way to people trying to kill each other, or it could be somebody very subtly and through subtext usurping another character. You know, or it could be these two characters who are in the same situation, but they're bantering back and forth because they came in with different perspectives. But either way, you've got a conflict. And of course, a challenging situation, which we already talked about. That's pass 4. Now pass 5. Your character actions pass. So pull out their character profile. Now, I'm going to ask you to do something here for pass 5 and pass 6, both that involve their character profiles. And if you don't have character profiles, sit down and create one. Just create, even if it's fairly simple, right? It's like if you're looking at it and you're going, okay, what's this character's motivation? What is their traits? The main things that show up every time we see them. What is their flaw? You know, just pick 4 or 5 things, or you could use one of our profiles, which is much more intense and has more depth to it. But it's like, what is it that you would use to think about who this character is? Now, don't write it in a big long summary. Make it a bullet point kind of thing, because what you're about to do, you need to be able to reference it instantly. So let's say we have a character. We know their traits. We know their role. We know their, you know, their motivation. We know their flaw. We know their subtext, let's just say. Then at that point, then you want to go through and look at every scene that that character is in and look at their actions and just ask, what would a character with this motivation do here? You know, let's say, you know, you've got the bad guy, that person's purpose is to steal money. They went into a house, the people came home. What would they do here, right? And it might be, oh, they would escape. It might be they would take them hostage. It might be they would go upstairs and steal some other stuff, right? But based on your character profile, you just take one item at a time and ask, what action might they take that would represent that character profile? This is important. Every one of your characters is different, so they would have different kinds of actions. If this character would do something that is completely cliche in that situation, I'm asking, maybe you need to go back and look at the character profile and just find a way to make that character more interesting. Have them do something that's surprising, something that's outside the box, but fits who they are. Do that, and we've got something interesting. In that case, you really want to reconsider any generic actions, especially the ones that your lead characters are taking. You know, like let's say you have a group of people together. And here, I'm just going to make some basic generalizations. Uh, if what you had was one of them was somebody who had just gotten back from war, and they were completely traumatized, and something happens, there's a gunshot outside. Somebody who is completely traumatized may shut down, and we may be seeing the person who we thought was the hero go hide in a closet. The other side is they could just automatically kick into war actions and go straight after the person and track them down and do whatever they do, right? So, but if you have generic actions, if every character, let's say there's 5 of them in that house when this thing happens, if every one of them does the exact same thing, those are generic actions. You don't want your lead characters taking generic actions. You want an actor looking at this and going, oh my God, I want to be the one taking those unique actions that that particular lead character took that the others didn't. So just another safety tip. Past 6. Now we're looking at dialogue. We're going to do the same kind of process here. What would a character with this profile item say in this situation? Right? So you'll look at every line of dialogue with one character and just ask, if that character is radical, what would they say differently than if they were very religious? If the character was violent, what would they say differently? If the character was passive, what line would they say here? If the character was a comedian, if the character was, somebody who was taking revenge, what would they say? Because every one of those characters would have a different line in that exact situation. And if they don't, if all of your characters would say the same thing in that same situation, then this is like a huge opportunity for you to be able to make your writing so much stronger. Again, reconsider any generic lines for your lead characters. If there are generic lines in that scene, they should come from the supporting characters, not your leads. You want your leads characters to be the most interesting dialogue all the way across. You are trying to sell those to a major actor. So, number 7. Finally, now we're here at the wordsmithing pass. And there's lots of things that you could say. I'm just going to give you a couple of things that came from producers. So the first one is success equals a fast read. And this, at one point I was talking with a writer and he said, well, I want them to read everything in my script. And I said, okay, then make it a fast read. And he says, no, it says, I want to describe a lot of things in the environment. and I was like, no, that's what you do in a novel. That absolutely works in a novel. That's important. He had a problem. He had a good pitch, but every time he got his script to a producer, they turned it down or they didn't read it. And that's important to know. So fast read means you've got a better chance the reader is actually going to read it. They're going to enjoy it. They're going to feel like you took care of them. So consider that. Cut out any unnecessary words, anything you can. Right? It's like if you have, like a paragraph that starts with, he pulls into the driveway, opens up his car, shuts off the engine, gets out, runs to the door, drops his phone, has to go back and pick it up, right? And then kicks the door in. First thing, there's a lot of stuff in there that's unnecessary. So I'd cut out all the unnecessary things. Second, You might, if you're going to keep most of that stuff, you might consider it doing it in a staccato style uh, where you say he pulls into the driveway, period, pops open the door, period, runs to the front door, period, right? So they're short to the point. You took out the words he runs to the front door, he pulls out he drops his phone, he does this, everything that's unnecessary, get rid of it. Make this thing so easy to read and so fast, you have a much better chance. And then go for strong nouns and emotional verbs. This one, I used to think was not that important. We had a writer who was going through one of our programs, and I was thinking about optioning the script, and he really wanted to option it to someone. But he wanted a big producer, and we weren't big producers at that time. So he comes to me and he said, I went to, the script consultant. I'm trying to get a recommend on the script, so it makes it easier for me to get it in the door. The script consultant gave me a pass. And he said, I think that this script is really good. So I told him I'd read 5 pages and then talk with him. What I found in those first 5 pages was he used the word walks. This character walks across the room. This character walks to the door, walks to the car, walks into the backyard. He used the word walks like 6 times in 5 pages. So I just ran a quick report. Turned out he used that word 72 times in the script. 72. So I went back to him and he and I got on Zoom, pulled up the thesaurus. We found a whole bunch of other ways to say the word walk. And then we went to each scene and just simply said, every time we see the word walk or walks, question is, what's the emotion of that scene? So, and then we would replace it based on the emotion. So he might walk across the room. He might run across the room because he's afraid or because he's in a hurry. He might saunter across the room because he thinks he's sexy, right? He might crawl across the room because he just got his ass kicked. But it was amazing just with those emotional verbs. We didn't add emotion to the story. We didn't say, hey, this guy is really scared, therefore he bolts across the room. We just looked and said, what would be a verb other than walk that would carry with it an emotion? So it also makes it more descriptive at the same time. We did the same thing for nouns. So with his, out of the 72 walks, we changed about 45 of them. And then we went and looked and said, what's the second verb he uses the most? And the third and the fourth. And in about an hour, we had changed about 7 different verbs and as many as we could get, usually is about 50%, to make them emotional instead of generic. And we did the same thing for some strong nouns. And then he resubmitted that script to the same person. The script consultant came back. We didn't change anything else. The script consultant came back and gave him a recommend just based on those changes. Huge difference in the result with us making tiny changes, without changing anything else. We didn't change the lead characters. We didn't change the opening scenes. We didn't change the structure, nothing. So this stuff makes a big difference. Now, what we've gone through, I've just given you some basic tips here so far. These are tips that I hope will help you do your rewrite and really improve the script that you have. But if you want to become a pro at this, if you want to become absolutely astounding at rewriting, let me just walk you through this upcoming class that we just recently created. I think we've created about 6 different rewrite classes in the last 20 years. This one we created about 1.5 years ago. I did a whole series of interviews with producers and some directors looking for what did they want to see in a script? what mattered to them, what would have them say yes to the script. So out of that, we then recreated this rewrite class to come up to exactly what they need. So this, what we just did today will improve your writing process if you do it. But if you want to become a great writer, just go through this with us. So there's 2 parts to this program. Each one of them has 10, 11 different lessons. It's about, I think it's about a 10-week long class. And you'll have time to write. It's every Monday and Thursday. So it gives you 3 days in between each one of these lessons. But part 1, we go to the pitch and the outline to make it as good as it can be. And there are some people who like outlining, don't like outlining. In this case, we're doing something profound with this outline. What we found was if you've got a 100-page script, it's really hard to make changes other than word kind of changes. If you're talking about making a big sweeping change, in a 100-page script, you're having to rewrite 50, 60 pages. But if what you do is bring that down to a 5 to 10-page outline, you know what? I can go through and make sweeping changes in a 7 or 8-page outline in 15 minutes. I can look and go, hey, it's going to start here, it's going to end there. That's different than what we have. What scenes would I need to change? Let me just go through and make those changes in the outline. And every one of those scenes, I can do an outline rewrite in, 5 to 10 minutes. It's actually incredibly easy. So part 1, you're going to be looking from an outline perspective, and you are going to make major improvements on the outline. And then you will go to part 2, which I'll show you in a moment, and make major improvements on how it's written. So here we go. Part 1, we'll start with you creating a pitch. And this is create the pitch so that you can make sure that this draft delivers on that pitch. This dramatically increases the chance that you can sell. Lesson 2, then you'll make sure that your structure is fantastic. So you will be going through and looking at your structure and saying and asking, how can I elevate this structure? If I change the inciting incident, does that change everything else? If I put in better midpoints, does that make the second half of the movie twice as good, right? So you will make those changes at that point. Lesson 3, then you're going to build the genre conventions into your outline. At least, I'd say 3/4 of the scripts that go into contest don't have genre conventions built into them. And you write in a different way if you're writing a thriller versus if you're writing a drama versus if you're writing a horror movie. Let me say one other thing. What we find is that having to do with genre, a lot of people do a drama with thriller elements, a drama with horror elements, and it's like, that's still a drama. And it makes it hard to sell if you go to thriller or horror producers. So this will be your chance to make sure that you build the genre conventions in at this outline level where it's easy. Then from there, in lesson 4, now you're going to look at your character profiles and beef them up, elevate who those characters are, make them more unique, more interesting, more compelling, and have them match the pitch in a better way. So in this case, small changes you make to your lead characters might make a huge difference in the quality of the script. In lesson 5, now you'll improve each character's individual story. And this is your lead characters. And we've had this happen where people are like blown away by how much of an improvement, because they hadn't seen what was possible with those characters until they created a specific individual story for that character inside this script. Lesson 6, now the job is to update the outline. Lesson 7, you're going to now solve the major problems before you rewrite. And again, if you're on draft 3, draft 4, draft 5, or even if you've completely finished this script and thought it was perfect, if you can go back and find any major problems and clear them up now, that keeps a reader from having an excuse to turn you down. And this industry is filled with people who are looking for reasons to say no, because then they don't have to take a risk. So you've got to get all those major problems out of there. So we'll give you a list of the major problems and solutions. You will solve them inside this outline, so that when it's easy, right? Then we go to lesson 8. Now you're going to solve the character problems. So up here we were solving structure and scene and all these other kinds of things. Lesson 9, you're going to now make sure this outlining is fascinating. And again, a lot of people don't think the outline matters. I'm going to tell you, when you get to this point right here and you have an outline that is just incredible, it's going to cause you to be able to write so much faster, and you're going to be so much more engaged as a reader or as a writer. Also, the reader will be more engaged too. So then we come to part 2. Part 2, we'll do something you've probably never even seen. We'll rate the entertainment value of every scene. Now, I know you have a story that is very entertaining, but you know what? When you go through this process, you'll probably find that there are certain scenes that are on a 1 to 10 or a 10, right? They're amazing, and they're so well set up, and they keep people engaged in the whole thing. And then you might have a scene right after it that's a 2, or a 5, or something like that. I've had so many writers come back to me after doing this and say, oh my God, I found 15 scenes that I could just make huge improvement on easily. And it was all around entertainment, not around conflict, not around structure, not around who the character was, not around saying better lines of dialogue. It was, how do I make this particular scene more entertaining? Because that's what our whole industry is about. Lesson 13, now then you'll look at the scene structures to double the drama. Most people write in like 3 scene structures. They have certain ways they write, and it's a pattern, and they keep doing the same kind of scene structures over and over. We're going to give you a whole bunch of different scene structures. You'll go in and find where are the repetitive kind of scene structures, and you'll look at them for an opportunity to make this script better. Here's the problem with repetitive scene structures. Like, let's say you have a certain structure that shows up 15 times in this script. By the 3rd or 4th time it shows up, the reader is already predicting the ending. They already know, which means they're bored. So this makes a huge difference. Number 14, now you're going to add meaningful action. We already talked about that. You'll just identify where are the action lines that are generic. Where's the stuff that is just busy work, and you'll make it more meaningful. Then on this one, giving your characters unique dialogue. We talked a little bit about it, but we've got a bunch of strategies so that you can make sure that your 2 or 3 lead characters have the most interesting dialogue of anybody in the script. And if anybody looks at pretty much any page with your protagonist or antagonist, and they just look at the dialogue that's there, they'll go, wow. Do that, and you've got a much, much better chance of getting an actor to sign on. In lesson 16, now we're going to go to the thing that sells actors. And this one started, I was interviewing some actors, and one of them said something about Shakespeare in Love, the opening scene. So I looked at it, and they had a DVD, with all the special effects and the things that had happened. But there was an interview with Geoffrey Rush, and he said, they asked him how he signed on to the project, and he said, I was in my agent's office. He handed me this script. I read the first 3 pages. I was laughing out loud. I couldn't stop thinking about it. I looked up and said, oh my God, I've got to be in this movie. Now, the first 3 pages were his character introduction, and it sold him. This has happened a lot of times. Your character introductions is not just the 4 lines that you say when you describe the character. Your character introduction is the entire scene. And we have a model for how you can introduce them in a way that is specifically designed to attract actors. Then it'll be about the key scenes that sell you. There are 7 main scenes in your script that either sell you or kill your chance of being the writer on the project. And you need to make sure every single one of those key scenes are amazing. So you'll pay special attention to those. And finally, you'll go through and test your description to make sure it's the best it can be. Now, if you look at that, we spent over 1,000 hours working on this program. And I did a whole series of interviews with managers, with producers, with actors to find out what they needed. This entire thing is designed to bring your writing to a professional level. If you have great ideas, if you love your scripts, if you love your characters, what this will do is give you a rewrite process that will take any script to a professional level if you do every single thing here. And it will also mean when you get to the point where you're working with managers and producers, you will end up having a process that you can show yourself as a pro. You can actually be the smartest person in the room. Now, let me just walk you through the rest of this. This program, the normal price on it is $350. Again, it's a 10-week class. You're going to go through the whole thing with your script. It starts on, if I'm correct, April 8th. And the normal price on this is $350. Right now, I'm going to give a special. This is for the first 10 people that sign up. You can get in at $175. That is half price in this situation. It gives you a chance to go through this script really great price, and at the same time, in the next starting 1 week from now, be able to improve your script every single day until this program is done. One other thing. The other way you can do this, so you can do it at the $175 price, or the other way you can do this is to join us in our membership. This is something brand new that we're doing, but you can get this class in the membership. It's in the membership, you'll end up doing this class in about 2 months. So it's basically $80 a month, $79.95. That totals what, like 160. And while you're in there, if you'd like, we have our 30-day classes set up in there, our 10-day classes, and a lot of videos that are like this one that will walk you through different key skill sets that you need. So this is something that you can join, go through the class, and then if you want, you can cancel it at that point. If you have seen other classes you want to take or other things you want to learn from it, you can stay with us, whichever works best for you. So all you have to do for this one, if you want to take the special at $175, just go to this link, bit.ly, bit.ly/I am rewriting. If you would like to do the membership version on that, just go to screenwritingmastery.ai, screenwritingmastery.ai. And the reason there's an AI there is because in this version, as you go through this program, you'll get feedback on pretty much every single lesson from AI, but you'll be able to get it immediately. And by the way, you will absolutely love it. So whichever of those works best for you, just do it. Write up, copy this down, bit.ly/I am rewriting, put it in your browser where you normally put a web address, click return, come join us. If you want to use this one, put in screenwritingmastery.ai, click return, and join the membership, and immediately just sign up for the professional rewrite class. That class won't cost you another thing while you're in there. You'll just simply go through it at whatever pace you'd like. So it was great hanging out with you guys today. I hope you got a lot out of what we've already done. And I promise you, whichever way you choose to take our pro rewrite process, this process will change your life. It will give you so much more confidence. It will give you so much more respect from other people. And when you start working with managers, it will have you be completely competent and one of the best and smartest people in the room. So with that, I'll close it out. It was great talking with you. This is Hal Krosman with Screenwriting U, wishing you the absolute best with your writing. Bye-bye, everyone.